So welcome to the slide room gallery. It's nice to see some new faces here. The slide room gallery is an independent gallery that we use as part of the school, but it's a separate non-profit. So we have a curatorial program where students learn to curate shows and help put shows together. And we also have a board of directors, and Nicole Sandbridge is on the board, and so is Tyler. And so one of the things we talked about is the different ways we can get shows together. And so we have students curate shows, or sometimes people will propose shows, and then I was thinking, well, it'd be interesting if we get some of our board members to curate shows. So I did, at one board meeting, suggest, Tyler, you do sculpture, why don't you curate a show on sculpture?
It was more sort of oblique than that. It was like, wouldn't it be nice if someone curated a sculpture show? And John looks over his shoulder like,
oh, okay.
I don't even know what sculpture is. So
yeah.
Yeah, so it's just, that's how, it's always been so interesting how shows start up. Like, it's just like this one idea and it gets bigger and bigger. All I knew was that Tyler said he wanted to do a show on food. And then Christine, you had talked to me about applying to the Simon Gallery, and you worked beer cans. But, well, maybe we could work that in. So it's a very kind of organic process. But I think for me, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Wendy Welch. I'm director of the Vancouver School of Art. And for me, it's really so great to have this as part of the school so that students could come and see the work of professional practicing artists and know that, you know, this is part of the world. So instead of just teaching art classes and sending people off into the world without understanding of the next process, it's been really valuable to have this gallery. So, and we don't have artist fees and the usual things that nonprofit galleries have yet. So we really are always so appreciative of the artists who are willing to take time to put their work in the gallery, and just for them to know that it's a great service to the students.
Particularly when it's heavy.
So it's been really a good process. And it was interesting, the thing I love about the curatorial process is that I came down, I think it was Wednesday. Wednesday is pretty close to Friday when you're doing a show, just so you know, and everything was still in boxes, and it's just really hard to believe it could become a show. Sorry. Okay.
no, we were on the same page.
Yeah, so I thought, okay. And then Thursday morning, it all looked so wonderful. Just
wave the wand.
Yeah, so it was really interesting to see. And then there's the process of doing a catalog the day of the show, which is really
the afternoon.
Getting everything together. So please do look at the catalog, and hopefully it's all right. But it's just part of what we do, and I love the fact that at the school and in the gallery we are able to do things at the last minute, because when you get involved in heavy bureaucracy, sometimes it would be impossible. Like if we were working at a big gallery, it would be impossible to do a catalog on the afternoon of the show. But this way, everything is always fresh at Visa and the Slide Room Gallery. So, and as I mentioned, Tyler is on the board of the Slide Room Gallery, and he's also a sculptor in Victoria and has done many public art projects. So I hand it over to you to talk about the work.
Thanks. Actually, if you bear with me, I wanted to just read through the brief statement that I wrote for the catalog as a starting point, and then take that and talk about some of the works, or all the works in the show, and how they relate to each other. So, here we go. Buffet is 1, a room or counter where light meals or snacks can be bought. 2, a meal consisting of several dishes set out from which guests serve themselves. Close-up, dinner plate. Neary is moving his fork around the plate, molding the mashed potato into a little mountain. He decides it's not big enough. Abruptly, he scrapes all the other food onto the tablecloth. He helps himself to the mashed potatoes, heaping the rest of the contents of the serving bowl onto the plate before him. It's still not big enough. Reaching out, he scoops all the potato off his kids' plates, adding to his pile. Now, like a mad potter, he starts to knead the white mush into some kind of shape. And that was an excerpt from the script to Close Encounters of the Third Kind by Steven Spielberg, 1976. I suspect that everyone's played with their food in some way or another, although possibly not with the fervor shown by Richard Dreyfuss's character in Close Encounters. It is his obsession with his creation and his family's fear and confusion that make this scene so poignant. He is misunderstood, but we understand. When I was first asked to curate a sculpture show, I had a few simple objectives. I wanted to show work that represented a variety of approaches to sculpture, and I wanted some of the artists involved to have never shown at the Slide Room Gallery before. So what is the connection between sculpture and food? I think this show is about food in the same way that when the Talking Heads sing about buildings and television, the songs are about buildings and television, but so much more. During this process of making an object, it can be ingested, configured, adjusted, tested, cooked, sampled, rejected, embraced, reconfigured, and possibly celebrated. Artists' memories of projects are often about taste. The taste of the dust, glue, paint, clay, foam, wood, etc. This can be a positive and negative association, even an occupational hazard. The courses here are varied, from Italian marble to mass-produced beer cans. A conversation will begin as the meal progresses. This is a social act. We sample a bit from each, eat more of the ones we like, less of the ones we like less. History is present, tinged with humor, obsession, compulsion, production, sustenance, consumption, and decay. Fill your plates and come back for more. The reference to the conversational aspect of this work, I think, became more important as this show is being installed. In a way, it's like inviting a number of guests to your house for dinner with the idea that they have things in common and they might hit it off, but you're never quite sure until you get them all into the same room. And then you see how the conversations begin. And when, actually it was Wednesday night, John and I were here. Accidentally, John was here, and we were sort of moving work around. The conversations did begin. It was quite interesting to see how the work started to relate to each other. And I'm hoping that as you move through this show, you can hear those conversations and see how the works relate. The idea for a show about food actually started with Kathryn's piece. She was the first person I asked to be in the show, and it was this piece that she suggested, and that's where the idea came from. Now, coincidentally, when my introduction to Kathryn as a person was when she applied to work at the same place I do, which shall remain nameless. But looking at her resume, it listed the Denman Island Chocolate Company or Factory as her previous employer. And I thought, well, this is interesting. There's stories to tell there, but she won't give up any of their recipes. This is Kathryn here, by the way, and her piece is entitled Solo, completed in 2005 from Italian marble. And when John and I were together moving it across the floor to its current location, it hadn't been unwrapped yet, and in the process of unwrapping it became very ceremonial because it was wrapped in a way that was reminiscent of some sort of ancient mummy or figure, and it has a very figurative feel to it. It's a beautiful piece of work. And then once it was unwrapped, we could marvel at the material and the craftsmanship. Now it was interesting, once this piece was here, David Gifford, who's over here, his work originally was over on this part of the gallery, but it seemed to migrate across the gallery to this corner because it had things it wanted to say to this piece. they started communicating with each other. And it was an interesting conversation, and one that I enjoyed sort of being witness to. Now, David's piece, it's almost like a backyard drama or narrative going on here, because we have this sort of mausoleum almost of an apiary or a bee yard in the center, and with the cast bronze forms in the middle of that. It's very like a memorial, but then you got the upturned chair, so it seems like there's been some sort of struggle to take place in search for a new home. And this tire track here, it's either it's interesting. It's either protecting or a threat to the scenario that's taking place behind it. There's a very interesting dynamic happening, and there's a story. And the introduction of the chair, I think, is crucial because it added a certain warmth to this little narrative. And it started also to speak to a couple of the other pieces in the show. We've got this little recipe box here. Calgary artist Lisa Benschop, currently the director of the Stride Gallery. When I asked her to participate in this show, mostly text-based works is what she does. But she sort of jumped at the chance. I was thrilled because it's not easy with the sliding gallery. We don't have fees to offer, so to get artists from out of town to participate can be a challenge. And she was on it immediately, had ideas. We talked about the idea of a recipe because it was something that could be text-based and a way for her to contribute. And so she's fashioned this. It's a deceptively simple recipe box with one recipe inside, a recipe for nostalgia. And everything about it informs that concept. We've got the handwritten nature of the card, the age of the box, the way the box has been labeled. Even the card itself has her, now I've forgotten the institute, the name that she's given her institute.
You must.
We need the all-point catalog too.
We need the catalog, yes.
So this artist goes by not her name, but do you want to read it?
Yes.
It's very small.
The Creative Production Division with support from the New School of Inquiry, Domestic Preservation, and the Archive and Library Special Collections of the Ellis Benschop Institute for the Preservation and Veneration of Imagination and Nostalgia.
So can I just mention here, I'm about to finish the catalog, and Travis says, oh, don't use Lisa's name, use this name instead. And so it was quite interesting to try and kind of fit that all in. Really, that's the name she wants to really go.
It's not a snappy acronym.
No, I don't think there is.
You'll see in the catalog how it is.
And she has a blog as well that is, it's some of her own work, but it references a lot of things that she finds interesting and inspiring. It really is for the advancement of interesting ideas and concepts and personalities. So I invite you to spend some time with this beautiful little box and the ideas that it contains. Now, again, we have the nature of the material and the wood and the nostalgia age of this box, which spoke again to Ian and Rorie's piece over in the corner here. And Ian is a young artist. He graduated from the University of Victoria last year and now lives in Toronto. And this box is called Hunt and Gather. And in a way, it's like a trap for a gaze. I mean, it's got this. It is a nostalgic piece. You've got these crates with these labels which are reminiscent of an older time. And the light from inside which invites you to look inside. But what you see inside is actually a trap, and you don't want to stick your hand in it or you will get stuck. So, but I guess you could take some consolation in the fact that the trap does not look like it's caught many things. There are cobwebs in there. It has a certain age and feel to it. And I think as a young artist, maybe speaks to the need to attract people's gaze and attention. He talks about the bold text as well, which again is a correlation to Lisa's piece that we were talking he had submitted some work to the Cyber Gallery about a year ago, and this work seemed appropriate for this show. So, moving around the room. It's interesting. Christine Clark presented a different version of this piece at the Ministry of Casual Living not too long ago, and had the idea that she'd like to present it here. Rich? There she is. Sorry. And for those who don't know, all of these discs were fashioned from a year's worth of beer cans, I believe. Yeah. I found it interesting to see that she placed all the labels face down, which I don't know, did you do that in the past? Or had you had some of the labels facing?
Some up.
Some up, some down?
Yeah, some up, yeah.
One of the associations that, obviously there seems to be a very fluid liquid feel to this piece, and the light reflecting off of it as it sort of washes up into the corner. It is almost like a liquid armor, like a liquid chain. And very nice reconfiguring. We talked about location in the window there during the daytime, the light. You can't see it now, but the light coming through the window to hit this piece. I think it also speaks to obsession and compulsion, and possibly addiction. But the bar's still open, by the way. Obsession, compulsion, that repetitive act of cutting out those cans speaks to me. I mean, as an artist, it's a concept that I've dealt with in some of my work, and also relates directly to how I make a living and the kind of repetitive tasks that I undergo on a daily basis.
I think it's interesting how it draws attention to the grid. Like, I mean, the structure of the Cyber Gallery is really unusual architecture for a gallery, and it's like you either have to fight the space or sort of work with it. So somehow it works with the chaos of that corner.
Well, it becomes very organic.
Well, people are speaking out. What hits me about this, it's a comparison of this to the installation piece on that, what is it? What was the other one you had?
The Ministry?
The Ministry. Yes. It was flowing down like beer flowing down. And it's like this piece is coming past that expression of getting past an addiction, and it's dealing with it. It's just beautiful, silver, shimmering shapes. It doesn't, to me, I don't get the feeling that this is beer falling down. It's like it's gone past that. It's another step. To me, anyway, that's how I feel.
But there's knowing that the origin of these discs, knowing that those labels still exist on the underside, there is sort of that double-edged sword to it. I think there's that internal and that external, the outside appearance and the inside content, and the light that is reflected from that window. From this angle, it's almost hypnotic actually, staring into the middle of it. So, and the shiny, effective play of light on the walls as well, which in some ways, in terms of the materials used, is bringing me over to these beautiful IKEA stands of me and Dickie's pieces. You know, these chickens are so gorgeous. There's a beauty to these creations, and a humor, and a horror too. I mean, it's sort of a converse flip-flop with these creations. And originally, I was thinking that they would be staggered throughout the gallery so they could be exhibited, but they wanted to come together. And I think it's because, in a way, they're in competition with each other, vying for our attention or affection. But they're all stars. They really are, you know, their own stars, and they're looking out at the rest of us all. Beautiful work. Now, Megan went to some effort to create these for me, because these pieces are from 2002. Way back there. But I was pleased to hear that she was happy to see them once they were uncovered. And I'm so glad that she did, because they're remarkable creations. And there was a series of 9? Yeah. Originally.
I thought they were the marble you were talking about originally when I walked in. You were
Oh.
talking about marble, and
Yeah, there's
those
the
caught
marble.
my eye right away, and I thought, you know, that pink marble or something.
Yeah, those are wax.
Yeah.
No, they're disarmingly light.
Yeah.
But I have to say, of all the things I've ever uncrated, this was the most disquieting.
Well, they were also wrapped in plastic bags.
Well, I have to say, I can't help but share the anecdote that our gallery intern, Serena Zapp, uncrated them, and Serena is a vegan. And immediately proclaimed that she was now more vegan than she'd ever been before.
I think that this is a fabrication.
I was fabrication. Well, it's
Fabrication.
interesting though, because of course a big part of, you know, I remember I had a vegan roommate who used to bombard me with theory on a regular basis, and she used to say all the time, "Where is your absent referent?" I said, "What are you talking about? Why are you saying this to me? Is this flecks of quinoa or, wiping off my sleeve?" Absent referent, meaning one looks at the meat, one doesn't think of where the meat is come from, the body of the meat. And it's sort of funny to me actually, because last night I was having a debate with somebody about visual art and about making art versus, of course, the production of disseminating art, seeing art online. The vision of art is kind of an element of desire as opposed to the concrete body of the art and where it's come from, as you referred to earlier, the smells of glue or dust, and making elements. So, I mean, the absent referent in all kinds of visual art, maybe particularly sculpture, is a very interesting it's an interesting bit of verbiage to transplant from veganism to contemporary art viewing in that sense. And I think there's roots of that. If you look at, there's a wonderful essay by Siri Hustvedt called Ghosts at the Table, where she points out that still life makes this amazing parity between the inertia of paint and the inertia of food. And this sort of sense of taking the inertia of one, which is decaying, and the other, which is not decaying, and momentarily pulling a switcheroo so that one takes the place of another. And you get this thing that seems undying, kind of deathless. And that's, of course, the great switcheroo of still life, period. It's one of the great switcheroos of trompe-l'oeil painting, to momentarily substitute this immoral thing for this decaying thing that is passing through time as fast as it possibly can. So we get these sort of transcendental gestures in some of this work. But a lot of it's either desire or digestion. It's either the before, when the thing is still in a state of desiring and the reference is nowhere to be seen, or after, when it's the remnant. And again, the body of the thing is nowhere to be seen. It's an interesting conundrum for food, and it's an interesting conundrum for sculpture. Which is sort of why I was particularly interested in your putting Bob Wise's piece in here. So maybe you could say something about that.
Well,
of all the pieces that wants some explanation.
Yeah, I think, well, firstly, the piece that this is based on is a piece that he did in 2006 called Rapnol. And it was a intended series of cast bronze potatoes. The one that he had come across, I think, when David Gifford and he were digging out a basement. A potato that had been partially consumed by a rat, which he cast in bronze. And a favorite piece of mine, I love the piece. And had the idea originally of showing the piece, but then inquiring about it. It was intended to, I think a series of 10 or 12 were to be made. Only 2 were actually fabricated. I approached Val Wise, his wife, about the piece. She had this cast for the piece. And as a tribute to the man, who I greatly admired, I thought this in some way underlined my feeling of absence for his not being with us anymore. You have this cast, you have this empty form, which has served its purpose as a reminder of his process.
There's a huge humor in that, though, too, because, I mean, if he is sitting there, no doubt under the influence of David Gifford, who's a tricky guy, and they see this potato that's been chewed on by a rat, and they think, okay, we'll bronze it. I mean, that is one gesture. But for you to then hold up the wool from that as a sort of votive stand-in for Bob, is sort of equating Bob with the rat. In a kind of wonderful way. I kind of like that thought. It makes me think of the rattiness of Bob. Which
Well, and if you look at these molds, I think I'm not sure, the part of the process that I think these may have been in a booth or a an initial part of the process. They're not the final mold that was used. You can see where he's actually, in an attempt to remove, I think, what was probably a wax, he has scraped the inside of these molds.
Yeah.
So there is that reference.
Well, it's
pulling
the digging aspect of sculpture, right? It's this digging, urgent, repetitive kind of
So
activity.
Tyler, would you mind just saying a few words about Bob Wise, since some people don't know who he is?
Oh, Bob Wise. Well, he was a sculptor, artist, engineer, friend, mentor in some ways. He was actually a distant relative of mine.
Really?
He's done so many interesting and fantastic works. But the thing about Bob for me was his unending interest and desire to help others who are involved in the task of making objects. Phoning them up and saying, do you know the best kind of glow-in-the-dark paint? Well, I just happen to have a jar of this stuff that I got from this place in the States. You can sample if you want to. Do you know of a good place to rent a studio? Well, there's 2 or 3 different places I know of right now. I can give you this phone number. If that doesn't pan out, I'll give you this one. I phoned them up once because I came across, there was a McDonald's that was being renovated. All the play equipment had been torn down and was sitting outside. So you got all these wonderful, brightly colored plastic, aged plastic forms. And I phoned him up and said, hey Bob, there's this stuff lying on the side of the road. And I think he was, before I got off the phone, he was already on his way out to the truck. In the process, he was telling me that he'd been in the auction house the week previous and had come across a human brain in a jar, and had phoned another artist about that with the thought that they'd be interested in that. So I mean, he was an incredible resource, but always interested and encouraging. So for me, his absence in the local scene is a huge loss. And I think, I mean, yes, there's the connection to food. More importantly, there's a connection to the task of making objects. And it's just my way of paying tribute. So.
Okay, great.
Now, there was a poem
There is a
by a
poem.
curatorial student
Yes.
written for this exhibition,
That's
inspired by this exhibition. I haven't had a chance to read the poem yet.
It's very
Come out a bit so you can see me. Okay, well, I came into the gallery as being set up on Wednesday and did a little bit of writing, but spent most of my time. Yesterday I spent about an hour and a half once everything was set up, and this was before I knew anything about the work, so this is purely from my impressions. And what appears in the catalog is a portion of this poem, and then the rest of it will be posted at my blog and possibly on the website.
Yeah, we'll
if
put it
people
on
wanna
the Side Room Gallery
the full
website.
piece, but I'll
Yeah.
go ahead and read this now. So it's titled after this show. It's called Buffet, with a question mark. So I was very curious as to how it all came together. I am the hungry. I am the child. I am the moth, drawn immediately to the afternoon light. Spilling amidst the opaque hip curves of a marble soup spoon, crafted for the giant's maw. Who now? Ghost sarcophagus, reclining peaceful next to the wreckage of chicken soul death, where the frenzy of bees left only longing. Princess Muffin, gone to the great coop in the sky. She shall be sorely missed among the hearts of Florida Key accordion babes. Her kin lounge languid, voluptuous vixens, drifting corpses on the winds of translucent hysteria. Diva dervishes, before which we can only divine the grandiose illusions of endless Ford family supper tables. I keep my distance, safe among the silenced cuckolds, safe from the plywood violence of red paint death promises. I can accept necessity, but conditioned for personification, my lip curls, intuitive. The small shadow entrance seduces child fingers with wily siren calls. Cartoon death manifested corporeal. Feel the pull Coyote feels before finding herself with 2 options. Die for the hunter, or devour my own leg and die for no one. And we must ask ourselves, what would Diamanda do? We do not linger with the dead, for the stream falls from the sky through imperfect panes to spill upon the floor. Shimmering medallions like coins upon the eyes of war dead, inviting surrender in fabricated debts. Ha! We found ourselves back on these shores after all. What does it mean to deconstruct for the dead? Channeling vandals in honor of those we have lost? Build not the obelisk, leave only ruins. For are we serious about the 1950s? Did we eat the honey, catch the fox, rub bloodied hands along the bodies of our supper companions, caress the braille-like flesh, abrasions marking the absence of flight? Upon the pedestal lies Pandora's box of ruminative cliché, bearing all answers, exposing intimate logic before us, revealing Grandma's recipes. I dare not look. I dwell in future mystery, for it seems we must not know this place, timid childland. I am relating myself to the spoon. I am walking paths paved with the blood of nursery rhymes. There is a lot of it. I am afraid of the fox, yet I trust neither the hunter nor the gatherer in their mythology of benign benediction. I am sure the trouble apparent here was no fault of my own, but I feel the guilt of disarray. I am small in the shadows of object, and the discord of forced compatibility, the coercion of art. You sculpt mine, baby, and I'll sculpt yours. It was as if the room shook, the street-torn maquette of a simpering queen fault line. The stars, they fell from NASA's wet dream heavens, and we knew then that they were only the false shine of disassembled beer cans pilfered from collections of neighborhood crows. And without the Trinity, we knew all was lost. For they rose before us, resilient among the wreckage of myth, obelisk, and night sky, rising upon the dais of 1950s end table, mirthless destiny we could never understand. It is this moment we realize the error of our ways, having failed to worship at the shrine of their rosy flesh, maiden, mother, crone, end time in situ, hungry with no microwave, a fitting end to civilization.